The morning I discovered that nearly every dollar I'd saved over a lifetime had vanished from my bank account, I thought the worst part would be hearing my own son-in-law calmly admit he'd taken it. I was wrong. Ryan looked me straight in the eyes and said, "It was family money, Kimberly. I just used it to fix a problem." Then his phone rang. He answered with a smug smile, but within seconds, every trace of color drained from his face. Whatever the voice on the other end said left him frozen in the middle of my daughter's kitchen. And for the first time, I realized someone else knew exactly what he'd done. If you've ever trusted someone who betrayed that trust, I'd love for you to stay with me until the end of my story. Please like this video if you believe honesty always finds its way back into the light. Subscribe if heartfelt family stories speak to you. And before we begin, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Reading your comments reminds me that no one has to face life's hardest betrayals alone. Before everything fell apart, I used to believe my family was small but safe. My name is Kimberly Martin, and for most of my life, I was the kind of woman who found comfort in simple things. A clean kitchen before bedtime, fresh coffee at 6 in the morning, the sound of children laughing in a classroom, a Sunday pot roast cooling on the stove while my daughter Emily set the table the same way she had since she was little. I lived in a quiet neighborhood outside Columbus, Ohio, in the same 2-story house my late husband Daniel and I bought when we were still young enough to think 30 years sounded like forever. The house was not fancy, but it held my whole life. There were pencil marks on the laundry room doorframe showing Emily's height from kindergarten to high school. There was a cracked blue flower pot on the porch Daniel had bought me one Mother's Day. In the hallway, I still kept our family photos lined in dark wooden frames, even though some of the faces in those pictures were gone. Daniel had been a careful man, not rich, never flashy. He worked as an insurance claims adjuster for nearly 35 years, and I taught 2nd grade at a public elementary school. We were ordinary people. We packed lunches. We clipped coupons. We paid bills on time. We saved what we could. When Daniel passed away after a short battle with pancreatic cancer, the silence he left behind nearly swallowed me whole. For months, I woke up expecting to hear him clearing his throat in the bathroom or humming old country songs while shaving. Instead, there was only the refrigerator buzzing and the furnace clicking on in the dark. The money he left me was never something I saw as wealth. It was security. It was the roof over my head. It was medicine, property taxes, emergency repairs, and dignity. Daniel had always said, "Kimberly, I don't want you depending on anyone when I'm gone. Not even family, especially not family when money gets involved." At the time, I thought that was a sad thing to say. Later, I would understand he had been trying to protect me from a world I had not yet met. My daughter, Emily Carter, was my only child. She was 42, a nurse at Riverside Methodist Hospital, and the person I loved most in the world. She had her father's soft eyes and my stubborn heart, though she would never admit the second part. After Daniel died, Emily called me every night for almost a year. Sometimes we talked about groceries, sometimes about her patients, sometimes about nothing at all. But those calls kept me from feeling like I had disappeared. When Emily married Ryan Carter 12 years earlier, I wanted to like him. Truly, I did. Ryan was handsome in that polished, confident way some men learn to wear like a suit. He had a firm handshake, bright white teeth, and a voice that made every sentence sound rehearsed but pleasant. He called me Mom before I expected it, and I remember feeling touched by that, maybe even relieved. Emily had been through one painful engagement before him, and I wanted her to have a good man, a steady man, someone who would love her gently. At first, Ryan seemed exactly that. He carried heavy boxes from my garage without being asked. He cleaned my gutters one fall afternoon while Emily and I baked apple muffins inside. When my kitchen faucet leaked, he came over with a toolbox and fixed it, refusing to let me pay for the part. "Family doesn't charge family," he said, smiling as he wiped his hands on a towel. I believed him. That was the thing about Ryan. He knew how to say the sentence a person most wanted to hear. He told Emily she worked too hard. He told me I had raised an incredible daughter. He told his church friends that family was the foundation of everything. At Thanksgiving, he bowed his head and prayed with such warmth that my sister later whispered, "That one's a keeper." I wanted him to be. Ryan said he owned a small construction consulting business. He described it as project management, residential development, renovation planning, words that sounded professional enough that I never questioned them. He drove a nice black SUV, wore expensive watches, and seemed to always be taking calls from clients. Sometimes he would step away from dinner to speak in a low voice on the porch, then return with a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. Back then, I thought that was stress. I did not yet know it was fear wearing a mask. The first time Ryan asked me about my finances, it seemed harmless. We were sitting at my kitchen table on a rainy Saturday afternoon. Emily was upstairs going through old Christmas decorations, and Ryan had just finished replacing a loose cabinet hinge. You doing okay with everything, Mom? He asked. With the cabinet, I laughed. Seems fine to me. No, I mean financially. He leaned back, casual as could be. I just worry about you here by yourself. Property taxes keep going up. Medical costs, too. I remember stirring my tea slowly. I manage. I'm sure you do, he said quickly. You're smart. I just mean if you ever need help looking over accounts or investments, I'd be happy to. It sounded thoughtful. A son-in-law caring about his widowed mother-in-law. What kind of woman would be offended by that? So I smiled and said, Thank you, Ryan. I'll keep that in mind. After that, the questions came gently spaced far enough apart that I did not connect them. At Easter, he asked whether Daniel had left everything in a trust. At Emily's birthday dinner, he asked if my savings were with a local bank or a national one. One Sunday after church, he mentioned that older people were often taken advantage of by scammers and asked whether I had anyone else listed on my accounts just in case. Each time I felt a small pinch of discomfort, but each time he wrapped the question in concern. You can't be too careful these days. I just want Emily to know you're protected. Daniel would want someone keeping an eye on things. That last one worked especially well. Whenever Ryan said Daniel's name, I softened. He knew that. I see it now. He had learned where my heart was tender and pressed there with 2 fingers whenever he needed me quiet. Emily trusted him completely. If I ever hesitated, she would say, Mom, Ryan's only trying to help. You know how he is. He worries. And I did know how he was, or thought I did. Around that time, I began noticing little signs that did not fit the picture Ryan painted of his life. He and Emily took a trip to Florida, even though Emily had complained about hospital overtime not being approved. Ryan bought a new SUV after telling everyone business had slowed down. At Christmas, he gave Emily diamond earrings, then joked that he had a guy who got him good deals. I remembered Daniel's voice in my head. People who always have a guy usually have a problem. But I pushed the thought away, because suspicion feels ugly when it points toward family. Because loneliness makes you grateful for attention. Because when you are a widow and your daughter's husband fixes your porch railing, takes your trash bins to the curb, and calls you mom, you do not want to believe there might be calculation behind kindness. One evening, Ryan stopped by without Emily. That was unusual. He said he had been in the area after meeting a client and wanted to check on me. He brought a rotisserie chicken from Kroger and a container of mashed potatoes. We ate at the kitchen table, just the 2 of us. He asked about my roof, which had been showing signs of age. I told him I was planning to get estimates in the spring. That could run you $20,000, maybe $25,000, he said. I nearly dropped my fork. For a roof, these days easily. He shook his head. This is why I worry about you sitting on everything alone. Money has to be managed, protected, moved the right way. I looked at him carefully. Ryan Daniel handled most of that before he died. I've kept things simple since then. That's exactly what makes me nervous, he said. Simple isn't always safe. There it was again, that small chill under the warmth. He reached across the table and touched my hand. I'm not trying to scare you, Mom. I just want to make sure nobody takes advantage of you. I wish I had pulled my hand away. Instead, I thanked him. After he left, I stood in the doorway and watched his SUV disappear down the street. The porch light flickered above me. A cold wind moved through the bare maple branches in the yard, scratching them against the siding like fingernails. For the first time, I wondered why Ryan cared so much about money that was not his. Then my phone buzzed. It was Emily. Mom, Ryan said your roof may be worse than you think. Please let him help you. He loves you. I stared at that last sentence for a long time. He loves you. I wanted that to be true so badly that I ignored the uneasy feeling in my stomach. And that was how it began, not with a theft, not with a scream, not with an empty bank account. It began with kindness that asked too many questions. The first real warning sign came in early February, on a night so cold the windows in my kitchen fogged while I was making vegetable soup. Emily had just finished a 12-hour shift at the hospital and stopped by on her way home. She looked exhausted, the kind of tired that sits deep under the eyes. I told her to sit down while I packed soup into containers for her and Ryan. He's been stressed lately, she said, rubbing her temples. Work, I asked. She nodded, but not with much confidence. A project got delayed. Some client hasn't paid him yet. You know how construction is. I did not know how construction was, not really. But I knew what it looked like when a woman was trying to explain something she did not fully understand herself. Is everything all right with money? I asked gently. Emily's face changed too quickly. Of course. Why wouldn't it be? No reason, honey. You just seem worried. She forced a smile. I'm just tired. I let it go because mothers learn when to push and when to wait. But after she left, I stood at the sink rinsing a pot, thinking about Ryan's new SUV, the watch he had worn at Christmas, and the way he always seemed to be taking private phone calls. A week later, Ryan came over with Emily for Sunday dinner. I had made baked chicken, green beans, cornbread, and peach cobbler because Emily loved it warm with vanilla ice cream. Ryan arrived carrying a bottle of wine that looked expensive. Too expensive considering Emily had just told me he was waiting on unpaid invoices. He kissed my cheek and said, "Mom, you spoil us." Something about his cheerfulness felt too bright, like a porch light left on in daylight. During dinner, he talked loudly about a lake house renovation he was supposedly managing for a retired surgeon. He described custom cabinets, imported tile-heated bathroom floors. Emily listened with pride, but I noticed she did not ask questions. She only nodded as if she had heard parts of the story before and knew not to interrupt. After dessert, Emily went upstairs to look for an old photo album she wanted. Ryan stayed at the table with me. That was when his tone changed. "Mom, can I ask you something?" I folded my napkin. "Of course. Do you still bank with Franklin Community?" My hand paused on the napkin. "Yes." "Why, no reason. I was just thinking small local banks can be a little behind when it comes to fraud protection. They've treated me well for years." "Oh, I'm sure they have." He smiled. "But do you have online access, set up alerts, beneficiary forms, someone listed in case of emergency?" I felt that small pinch again, sharper this time. "Ryan, I have things handled." He lifted both hands as if I had accused him of something. I know. I'm not trying to pry. It's just that Emily worries." That sentence landed exactly where he intended it to. "Emily worries?" I asked. "All the time," he said softly. "She doesn't want to burden you with it. But she worries about you being alone, about bills, about medical decisions if something happens." My chest tightened. "She should talk to me if she feels that way. She doesn't want to upset you." Then he leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Mom, sometimes the best gift you can give your daughter is making sure she doesn't have to scramble in a crisis." It sounded reasonable. Loving even. But later that evening when I asked Emily about it, she seemed confused. "Ryan said you've been worried about my accounts," I said carefully. Emily blinked. "My accounts." "No, mine. He said you worry about me being alone." "Well, I do worry," she said, but her voice was uncertain. "I mean, any daughter would." "Did you ask him to talk to me about my bank?" She looked down at her phone. "Not exactly, but Ryan understands financial stuff better than I do." There it was again, that quiet surrender in her voice. Ryan understands. Ryan knows. Ryan is trying to help. The more I heard those words, the less comfort they gave me. Over the next month, Ryan's questions became more specific. He never asked them all at once. That would have been too obvious. Instead, he scattered them into ordinary conversations. When he drove me to pick up a prescription, he asked if my Social Security deposit went into checking or savings. When he helped bring in groceries, he asked whether Daniel's life insurance had been paid out as a lump sum. When he saw me sorting mail, he noticed an envelope from my brokerage firm and said, "You still keep investments separate from your main account." I remember looking at him, then really looking. His face stayed relaxed, but his eyes were not relaxed at all. They were sharp, measuring. "Ryan," I said, "why do you need to know that?" For half a second, something cold passed over his expression. Then he laughed. "Occupational hazard. I manage budgets all day. I notice things." "You manage construction projects." "Exactly. Budgets, contracts, payments, same world." But it was not the same world. My late husband had handled insurance claims, and he had always told me that people who mixed words too easily were often trying to hide the truth between them. After that, I began noticing other things. Ryan stopped letting Emily answer certain questions. If I asked how work was going, he answered for her. If I asked whether they were saving for a vacation, he answered first. If Emily mentioned being tired, he turned it into a joke before she could say more. Once during a family dinner at my sister Patricia's house, Emily said, "We may need to slow down on spending for a while." Ryan's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. The whole table barely noticed, but I did. He smiled at Emily, but it was not a kind smile. "Babe, don't make us sound broke," he said lightly. Everyone laughed. Emily's face flushed. I did not laugh. Not. On the drive home, I kept thinking about that moment. Not because of what he said, but because of how quickly Emily went quiet afterward. My daughter had spent her life speaking her mind. She argued with teachers in high school when she thought they were unfair. She corrected doctors at work when they ignored nurses. She once marched into a mechanic's office because they tried to overcharge me for brake pads. But with Ryan, she folded smaller. That scared me more than the money questions. Around the same time, Ryan started showing off even more. He traded his black SUV for a newer one. He bought Emily a designer purse for their anniversary. He posted photos from a weekend trip to Nashville, smiling in rooftop restaurants and hotel lobbies. Yet Emily privately admitted she had picked up extra shifts. "Just for a few months," she told me. "Ryan says cash flow is weird right now." "Cash flow," I repeated. She gave me a tired smile. That's what he calls it. What do you call it? She looked at me, and for one brief second, I saw fear. Then her phone rang. Ryan. She answered immediately and walked into the hallway. I could not hear every word, but I heard her say, "No, I didn't tell her anything." Then lower. "Ryan, please. I'm at my mom's." When she came back, her face was pale. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine," she said too quickly. "He just needed to know when I'd be home." That night after Emily left, I pulled out my bank folder from the lower drawer of Daniel's old desk. I checked my statements, insurance papers, beneficiary forms, and the small notebook where I kept passwords sealed in an envelope. Everything seemed in order. Still, I moved the envelope to a different drawer. Then I felt foolish. Was I really hiding things from my own son-in-law? The guilt came fast. Ryan had fixed my sink. Ryan had shoveled snow from my driveway. Ryan had sat beside me at Daniel's funeral and held my elbow when my knees nearly gave out. But another voice answered, quieter and firmer. Good deeds do not give someone the right to your private life. By spring, Ryan had started using a new phrase, family planning. He said it one evening when he and Emily came over after church. "Mom, you don't need to do everything alone. At your age, family planning matters." "At my age," I repeated. He chuckled. "You know what I mean." I did, and I hated it. He made 68 sound like a doorway to helplessness. "I'm still capable of paying my own bills," I said. "Of course you are," he replied smoothly. "But what if you fall? What if there's a stroke? What if something happens and Emily can't access what she needs to help you?" Emily touched my arm. "Mom, he's not wrong." I looked at her, hurt rising in my throat. "Have I ever given you reason to think I'm not handling things?" "No," she said softly. "But Dad handled so much before." The room went very still. Ryan looked down almost respectfully, but I saw the corner of his mouth move. Just a flicker, a tiny sign of satisfaction. That was the moment I should have ended the conversation. Instead, I swallowed my discomfort because my daughter looked tired, because my son-in-law looked concerned, because Daniel was gone, and because part of me feared they were right. Maybe I was getting older. Maybe I was being proud. Maybe letting family help was not weakness. Ryan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded brochure from a financial services office I had never heard of. "I know a guy who helps families organize these things," he said. There it was. I know a guy. I stared at the brochure, but I did not take it. Not yet. And across the table, Ryan's smile stayed perfectly calm, but his fingers tapped once against the paper. Impatient. That small tap told me what his smile did not. Ryan Carter was waiting for something, and whatever it was, he was getting tired of waiting. The trap was not sprung all at once. That is what I want people to understand. When someone is planning to take advantage of you, they rarely come through the front door holding a warning sign. They come carrying soup when you are sick. They offer rides when you are tired. They speak in a gentle voice and make you feel guilty for doubting them. By April, Ryan had become strangely present in my life. He called every few days, always with some little reason. Had I checked the smoke detector batteries? Did I need help moving the patio chairs out of storage? Had I gotten the roof estimate yet? Did I remember to schedule my yearly physical? On the surface, it all looked caring. But underneath, I felt watched. One Thursday morning, I woke up dizzy. At first, I thought I had simply gotten out of bed too quickly. The room tilted a little, and I reached for the dresser to steady myself. I stood there in my nightgown, one hand pressed against the wood, waiting for the spinning to pass. It did not pass right away. I sat on the edge of the bed and took slow breaths. My heart was beating too fast, not painfully, but enough to scare me. Living alone changes the way fear enters your body. When Daniel was alive, I could call his name from any room and know he would answer. Now, when something felt wrong, the silence answered first. I called Emily. She picked up on the second ring. "Mom, I'm all right," I said quickly, because mothers do that even when they are not sure. "I'm just a little dizzy." Her voice sharpened. How dizzy enough that I thought I should tell someone. Within 20 minutes, Emily was at my house in her scrub's hair, pulled back, worry all over her face. She checked my blood pressure with the cuff she kept in her car and frowned. "It's a little high. We're going to urgent care." "Honey, I don't want to make a fuss. It's not a fuss. Get your shoes." I almost smiled. That was my Emily again, firm and bossy in the way that used to make me proud. Then Ryan called. Emily answered while helping me into my coat. "She's dizzy. I'm taking her in." I heard his voice through the phone, low and fast. Emily looked at me. "Ryan says he'll meet us there. He doesn't need to. He wants to." And just like that, he was part of it. At the urgent care clinic, everything smelled like disinfectant and coffee. The waiting room television played a morning talk show no one watched. Ryan arrived before I was even called back. He came in wearing dark slacks and a blue button-down shirt, looking concerned enough to be convincing. "Mom," he said, taking my hand. You scared us. I had not scared him. I had interrupted him. I could feel it, though I had no proof. The doctor said it was likely dehydration stress and blood pressure fluctuation. Nothing serious, but she recommended follow-up with my primary physician and told me to avoid driving for a couple of days. Ryan listened very carefully. Too carefully. On the way out, he insisted on driving my car home while Emily drove me. I protested, but he laughed it off. Doctor said, no driving, Mom. Let us help. That afternoon, Emily stayed with me. She made tea and folded a load of laundry, even though I told her not to. Ryan sat at Daniel's old desk in the den saying he had a few work emails to send. I remember that detail now with a sick feeling. Daniel's desk. The same desk where I kept bank folders, insurance papers, old tax returns, and the sealed envelope I had moved only weeks earlier. At the time, I was too tired to think about it. Later, Ryan came into the living room holding a yellow legal pad. Mom, this morning was exactly what I've been talking about, he said gently. I looked up from the blanket over my knees. What do you mean I mean emergencies? What if Emily had been at work and couldn't leave? What if you'd needed something handled quickly? Emily sat beside me quiet. Ryan continued, I'm not saying anything terrible is happening, but we should be prepared. That word again. Prepared. It sounded responsible. Safe, adult. He set the legal pad on the coffee table. I made a small checklist. Nothing complicated. Just basic things families should have in place. I glanced at the paper. Emergency contacts, medical release, household information, bank access in case of incapacity, utility accounts, insurance contact. My stomach tightened. Ryan, I don't think I need all that. He gave me a soft, patient smile. The kind people give children or old women they believe are confused. Mom, this isn't about taking anything from you. It's about protecting you. Emily touched my arm. It might be smart, Mom. Just so I know what to do if something happens. I looked at my daughter's worried face, and that was where the trap tightened. Because Ryan was not asking me to trust him. He was asking me to help Emily. And there was almost nothing I would not do for Emily. Over the next few days, Ryan became even more helpful. He picked up my prescriptions. He drove me to my follow-up appointment. He brought over low-sodium soup and made jokes about becoming my personal chauffeur. Then, on Saturday afternoon, he arrived with a folder. Emily was with him. That mattered. If he had come alone, perhaps I would have been more guarded. But Emily came through the door first carrying flowers, saying, Don't be mad. We just want to get this settled so nobody worries. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the spring sunlight falling across the same surface where Daniel used to read the newspaper. Ryan placed the folder in front of me. These are basic authorization forms, he said, mostly medical and emergency contact stuff. From where I asked, a legal template service and some bank forms, standard documents. I looked them over. I did not like that he had looked them over before I had seen them. I opened the folder. The pages were full of small print. My eyes were tired and I had not slept well since the dizzy spell. Ryan explained each document quickly, smoothly. This one lets Emily speak with doctors if you're unable to. That one gives permission for emergency household bills to be paid. This one just confirms who can help manage things temporarily if you're hospitalized. Temporarily. That word sat in my mind like a cushion over something sharp. Shouldn't I have Thomas Bennett look at these? I asked. Thomas had been Daniel's attorney and an old family friend. I had not needed him in years, but his name came out of my mouth almost by instinct. Ryan's face did not change much, but his fingers tightened slightly on his coffee cup. You can, he said. Of course you can. But Thomas will charge you $300 just to tell you these are routine. Emily sighed. Mom, Ryan's not trying to rush you. But he was. I could feel it. Ryan leaned forward. Kimberly, forgive me for being direct, but this is exactly why families get caught unprepared. Everyone says they'll handle it later. Then, later comes too fast. That sentence frightened me. Not because it was cruel, because it was true enough to sound wise. I thought about the morning dizziness. I thought about Emily racing from work. I thought about lying on the floor someday, unable to speak while bills went unpaid and my daughter panicked. I thought about Daniel telling me to be careful, but I also thought about Daniel trusting paperwork plans order. So I took the pen. The first few signatures felt harmless. Medical release, emergency contact, utility authorization. Then Ryan slid another form forward. This one is just for bank communication, he said. I looked at the header. The words blurred slightly because I had forgotten my reading glasses in the living room. Bank communication. Only if you're incapacitated, he said quickly. Emily would be the primary. I'm just listed because she works long shifts. Emily looked surprised. You are. Ryan smiled at her. Only as backup, babe. Makes sense, right? She hesitated, then nodded. I should have stopped there. I should have put down the pen and said, no, Thomas needs to see this. But Ryan had created the perfect moment. I was tired. Emily was anxious. The papers looked official. My blood pressure had been high. Everyone was acting as if refusal would be stubbornness, not caution. So I signed. Not because I trusted the paper, because I trusted my daughter. Ryan gathered the pages quickly when we finished. Too quickly. I'll make copies and bring everything back, he said. I should keep the originals, I said. Of course, he replied. I just need to scan them properly first. That sounded reasonable too. Everything sounded reasonable until it was too late. After they left, I sat alone at the kitchen table staring at the faint marks the pen had left on my fingers. Outside, a robin hopped along the fence Daniel had built 15 years earlier. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. Something inside me whispered that I had made a mistake. I called Emily. She answered in the car. I could hear Ryan's voice faintly in the background. Honey, I said, when Ryan brings those papers back, I want to take them to Thomas. There was a pause. Then Emily said, Of course, Mom. That's fine. But behind her, I heard Ryan say something low and irritated. Emily covered the phone, but not fast enough. I heard 3 words. She already signed. My hand went cold around the receiver. When Emily came back on the line, her voice was too bright. Mom, everything's okay. We'll talk tomorrow. After we hung up, I sat very still. Those 3 words kept circling in my mind. She already signed. Not, we'll explain it. Not, she can review it. Not, we'll make sure she feels comfortable. She already signed. That night, I barely slept. At 2 a.m, I went downstairs, opened Daniel's old desk, and checked the drawer where I had moved my password envelope. It was still there, but the bank folder beside it had been shifted. Just slightly. Enough that only I would notice. And for the first time, the fear inside me became more than a feeling. It became a question. What exactly had Ryan Carter been looking for 2 weeks after I signed those papers? The roof finally forced my hand. A spring storm rolled through Columbus on a Wednesday night, bringing hard rain and wind that rattled the windows until nearly midnight. I had always loved the sound of rain on the roof when Daniel was alive. Back then, it made the house feel cozy, protected, wrapped in something larger than us. That night, it sounded different. It sounded like a warning. The next morning, I found a brown stain spreading across the ceiling in the upstairs hallway. A small drop of water gathered at the edge of it, trembled, then fell onto the hardwood floor. I stood there in my robe staring at it. Wonderful, I whispered. I called a roofing company Daniel had used years before. A young man came out that afternoon, climbed around outside for nearly 40 minutes, then stood on my porch with a clipboard and a sympathetic expression. I'm sorry, Mrs. Martin, he said. You've got damage around the flashing, some missing shingles, and the decking may be soft in a few spots. You don't need a full replacement today, but you're getting close. How much, I asked, already bracing myself. He gave me 2 estimates, one for urgent repairs, one for full replacement. Even the smaller number made my stomach tighten. But I had prepared for things like this. That was why Daniel and I had saved. Not for luxury, not for vacations or jewelry or attention. We saved so I would not have to beg anyone when life needed fixing. The next morning, I drove to Franklin Community Bank. It was the same branch Daniel and I had used for nearly 25 years. The building sat beside a pharmacy and a little bakery that sold cinnamon rolls on Fridays. Inside, the carpet was blue-gray, the lighting soft, and the air smelled faintly of paper and coffee. I remember feeling nervous but not frightened. Not yet. I signed in and waited until a teller named Marcy called me forward. I knew Marcy. She had worked there for years and always asked about Emily. Good morning, Mrs. Martin, she said. What can we help you with today? I need to transfer some money from savings into checking, I said. Roof repairs. Of course. She typed my information into the computer. Her smile stayed in place for a moment. Then it faded. At first, I thought maybe the system was slow. She typed again. Her eyes moved across the screen. Is there a problem, I asked? Marcy looked up, then looked behind her toward one of the glass offices. Let me get a manager for you. Something inside me dropped. Why? Just one moment. She walked away before I could ask anything else. I stood there with my purse against my side, feeling suddenly aware of every sound in the bank. The printer behind the counter, the low murmur of another customer, the soft chime when the front door opened, my own heartbeat. A man in a navy suit came out of the office. His name tag read Alan Pierce, branch manager. I had seen him before but never spoken to him much. Mrs. Martin, he said carefully. Would you step into my office? There are sentences that sound polite but feel like bad news. That was one of them. I followed him into the glass office. He closed the door, offered me a chair, and sat behind his desk. Marcy came in with a folder and placed it in front of him. Mr. Pierce, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, I only need money for roof repairs. He folded his hands. Mrs. Martin, I need to confirm something. Were you aware of recent transfers from your savings account? My mouth went dry. What transfers? He looked down at the folder. 3 outgoing transfers over the past 13 days. One for $28,000, one for $46,000, and one for... He paused. I knew then, before he finished, that something terrible had happened. One for $179,000. The room seemed to tilt. No, I said. It was the only word I could find. Mr. Pierce's face softened. I understand this is upsetting. No, I said again louder. That isn't possible. I didn't transfer that money. He turned the folder toward me. There were copies of forms, my name, my account number, authorization codes, a signature that looked enough like mine to make my blood run cold. My hands began to shake. That's not right, I whispered. I didn't do this. Mr. Pierce pointed gently to one page. The transactions were authorized under a financial access document submitted recently. I stared at him. What document? He took out another form. And there it was. One of the papers Ryan had slid across my kitchen table. Only it did not look exactly the way I remembered it. The heading was formal. Durable financial authorization. Emergency account access. Authorized representative. My eyes moved down the page. Primary representative Emily Carter. Secondary representative Ryan Carter. But there was another section lower down. Permission to initiate transfers for household medical debt and family emergency purposes. My breath caught. I was told this was only if I was incapacitated. Mr. Pierce was quiet. I was told this was for emergencies, I said. The document does reference emergency purposes. I am not incapacitated. No, ma'am. Then how could this happen? He hesitated, and that hesitation told me there was more. The transfers were requested by Mr. Ryan Carter using the authorization form. The notes attached stated the funds were being moved temporarily to protect family assets during a financial restructuring. Financial restructuring. I almost laughed, but it came out as a broken sound. Where did the money go? Mr. Pierce looked at the page again. The receiving account appears to be connected to Carter Development Solutions, LLC, Ryan's company. For a moment, I could not hear anything. Not the printer, not the voices outside, not even my own breathing. I saw Daniel in my mind sitting at our kitchen table years ago, balancing our checkbook with a pencil behind his ear. $100 into savings, $50 into emergency funds, tax refund into the future, every little sacrifice, every vacation we skipped, every winter coat I wore 1 extra year, every lunch I packed instead of buying, every small act of discipline that built a life. And now a man who called me mom had moved it with a signature and a lie. I want it reversed, I said. Mr. Pierce's face tightened. We can file a dispute, but because the authorization appears valid and because the transfers have already cleared, it may not be immediate. Not immediate. My voice cracked. That is my retirement. That is my husband's life insurance. That is everything. Marcy, who had been standing near the door, quietly handed me a cup of water. I took it, but my fingers were shaking so badly the water rippled. Mr. Pierce lowered his voice. Mrs. Martin, do you believe you were misled into signing this? I looked at him. The answer should have been simple. Yes, but saying it out loud meant admitting something I was not ready to admit. That my daughter's husband had trapped me. That Emily had sat beside me while it happened. That I had ignored every warning because I wanted peace more than truth. I don't know what I signed, I whispered. I trusted them. Mr. Pierce nodded slowly. Then I strongly recommend you speak with an attorney. And you may also want to file a police report. Police. The word frightened me almost as much as the theft. Calling the police on Ryan meant calling the police into Emily's marriage, into my family, into everything private and painful. I thought of Emily's tired face, her hands around a coffee mug, her voice saying, Ryan understands financial stuff better than I do. Did she know? Had she helped him? Or was she trapped too? I need copies of everything I said. Mr. Pierce did not argue. He printed transaction records, authorization forms, receiving account details, and dispute paperwork. The printer seemed to run forever. When he handed me the folder, it felt heavier than paper. It felt like proof of my own foolishness. I walked out of the bank slowly. The bakery next door had a chalkboard sign advertising cinnamon rolls, and for some reason, that ordinary little sign nearly broke me. People were buying pastries. Cars were passing. A woman laughed into her phone near the pharmacy door. The world had not stopped, but mine had. I sat in my car with the folder on my lap and called Emily. She answered on the 4th ring. Mom, I'm about to start rounds. My savings account is almost empty. Silence. Then, what the money is gone, Emily. What do you mean gone transferred? To Ryan's company? She did not speak. Emily, I said, my voice shaking. Did you know? No, she whispered. But there was something in that whisper. Not guilt, fear. Before I could ask another question, I heard Ryan's voice in the background. Who is that? Emily said, it's my mom. Then the line muffled. I heard movement, a low exchange. Emily saying, Ryan, what did you do? Then the call ended. Not disconnected by accident. Ended. I stared at the phone. A minute later, a text appeared from Emily. Come to the house tonight. We need to talk calmly. Calmly. That word made something inside me harden. I looked down at the bank folder at the pages that showed my life savings funneled into Ryan Carter's business like I was nothing more than an open drawer. Then I started the car. For the first time since Daniel died, I did not drive home. I drove straight to my daughter's house. And with every mile, the shock inside me turned into something else. Not rage yet, not courage yet, but the beginning of both. By the time I pulled into Emily and Ryan's driveway, my hands were stiff from gripping the steering wheel. Their house sat in a newer subdivision about 20 minutes from mine, the kind of neighborhood with trimmed lawns, stone mailboxes, and front porches decorated according to the season. Emily had always loved that house. She used to say it made her feel like she had finally built the stable life Daniel and I wanted for her. That evening, it looked less like a home and more like a stage. Ryan's SUV was already in the driveway. Emily's car was beside it. The porch light was on even though the sun had not fully gone down, and through the front window, I could see movement in the kitchen. I sat in my car for a moment with the bank folder pressed against my chest. Part of me wanted to turn around. Not because I was afraid of Ryan, because I was afraid of what Emily might say. It is one thing to know someone stole from you. It is another thing to face your own child and wonder whether love will make her blind to it. I walked to the door and rang the bell. Emily opened it almost immediately. Her face looked pale and swollen as if she had been crying but was trying not to show it. Mom, she said softly. I stepped inside. Where is he? She looked toward the kitchen. Ryan stood at the island in a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up calm as a man waiting for coffee. A glass of water sat beside him. His phone lay face down on the counter. Nothing about him looked panicked. That frightened me more than anger would have. Kimberly, he said, using my first name instead of Mom. Come in. Let's not make this uglier than it has to be. I held up the folder. You emptied my savings account. Emily flinched. Ryan sighed as if I had disappointed him by using the wrong tone. I did not empty anything, he said. I moved funds temporarily. To your company, for family protection. I stared at him. Do you hear yourself? He leaned both hands on the counter. Yes, I do. And if you would calm down long enough to listen, you might understand that I was trying to prevent a much bigger disaster. Emily stood near the refrigerator, arms folded tightly across her stomach. What disaster? I asked. Ryan glanced at her, then back at me. I had a debt situation, he said. The words hung in the kitchen like smoke. A debt situation, I repeated. Yes, with my retirement money. It wasn't supposed to touch your day-to-day life. I was going to put it back before you ever needed it. I nearly laughed. Before I needed it? Ryan, I needed it today. For my roof. For the house your so-called concern kept asking about. His jaw tightened. Emily whispered Ryan how much. He did not answer her. How much, she asked again louder. Ryan looked irritated now. Not ashamed. Irritated. It's complicated. No, I said. It's not. You took over $250,000 from me. Emily's hand flew to her mouth. Ryan turned on me. That number sounds dramatic when you say it like that. It is dramatic. It was my life savings. It was sitting there doing nothing. The kitchen went silent. Even Emily looked at him then. I felt something inside me crack open, something old and trusting giving way. Doing nothing, I said slowly. That money was keeping me independent. That money was my medicine, my taxes, my repairs, my safety. That money was Daniel's last promise to me. Ryan's expression hardened at Daniel's name. With respect, he said, though there was none in his voice, Daniel isn't here dealing with the current reality. I took one step toward him. Do not speak about my husband. Emily said, Ryan, stop. But he did not stop. Somebody had to make a hard decision, he said. Emily and I could have lost everything. Emily stared at him. What do you mean we... Ryan looked at her like she was supposed to understand without explanation. The house, the cars, the business, our credit, your reputation. My reputation, she asked. You work at a hospital, Emily. You think people don't talk. You think financial ruin doesn't follow a family. I could see what he was doing. He was pulling her fear into the room and shaping it into a leash. I opened the folder and spread the bank papers across the island. You lied to me about these forms. I explained them. You told me they were for emergencies if I became incapacitated. This was an emergency. I was not incapacitated. No, he snapped. You were naive. Emily gasped. Ryan! He caught himself, but too late. The polite mask slipped back into place thinner than before. I'm sorry, he said. That came out wrong. No, I said. I think that came out exactly right. Ryan rubbed his forehead. For the first time, I noticed sweat at his hairline. I didn't have a choice, he said. There were people pressing me. What people? He looked away. What people, Ryan? Private lenders. Emily's face changed. You said it was a delayed client payment. It started that way. What started that way? He slammed his palm lightly on the counter, not hard enough to be violence, but hard enough to make Emily jump. Do you want the truth? Fine. I borrowed against a couple of projects. Then one project fell through, another client sued, and some interest got out of hand. Interest, I asked. From a bank. He did not answer. That answer told me enough. Emily's voice trembled. You told me the business was fine. It was fine until people stopped paying. You told me we were fine. I was trying to protect you. I watched my daughter absorb those words. I had heard them too many times from him. Protect you. Help you. Family. Emergency. Every word he used was a clean towel thrown over something filthy. I pointed to the papers. You didn't protect anyone. You stole. Ryan's eyes flashed. Careful. No. You be careful. The word surprised even me. My voice had changed. It was still shaking, but there was steel underneath it now. Ryan noticed too. He straightened. Kimberly, if you go to the police, you will destroy your daughter's life. Emily looked at him. Why would my life be destroyed if you did this? Because we are married, he said. Because our finances are tied. Because if I go down, you go down with me. That was the first moment I saw true fear in Emily's eyes. Not fear of losing money. Fear of the man standing beside her. I softened my voice. Emily, did you sign anything? No, she whispered. I don't think so. Ryan immediately said, You signed household documents last year. Don't pretend you remember every page. She turned toward him. What does that mean? It means adults sign things. That doesn't make everything a conspiracy. I looked from one to the other, and a terrible understanding began to form. Ryan's debt was not just business trouble. It was something darker. Something desperate enough that he had used my name, my trust, and maybe even Emily's without telling her. I gathered the papers slowly. I'm going to speak with an attorney. Ryan laughed once, sharp and humorless. Thomas Bennett. That old man. He'll tell you the same thing the bank did. You signed. You seem very interested in reminding me of that. Because it matters. No, I said. The truth matters. His face twisted. The truth is that I saved this family from a crisis you don't even understand, with my money, with family money. It was not family money. You would have left it to Emily eventually. The sentence hit me like a slap. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Ryan, stop talking. But he had gone too far to turn back. He pointed at the folder. I borrowed money that was going to end up helping this family anyway. I kept the house standing. I kept collectors away. I kept your daughter from waking up to strangers at the door. Collectors, Emily whispered. Ryan froze for half a second. There it was, the crack in the wall. I looked at him. What kind of collectors? He looked down at his phone. It buzzed once on the counter. None of us moved. Then it buzzed again. Ryan flipped it over just enough to see the screen. Whatever name appeared there made his face tighten. He declined the call. Emily saw it. Who was that? No one. The phone buzzed again. This time Ryan picked it up and walked toward the hallway. I stepped in front of him. No, I said. We're not done. He looked down at me, and for a moment I saw the man beneath all the charm. Cold, cornered, angry. You have no idea what you're interfering with, he said quietly. Then explain it. His smile came back, but it was ugly now. You want an explanation? Fine. I owed money. I used money. I will replace money. That is the whole story. But his phone kept buzzing in his hand, and the way he stared at it told me that was not the whole story at all. Not even close. I did not sleep that night. I drove home from Emily's house with my bank folder on the passenger seat and Ryan's words echoing in my head. You would have left it to Emily eventually. That sentence hurt in a way I cannot fully explain. It was not just greedy. It was dismissive, as if I were already half gone, as if my years, my choices, my needs, and my independence were just temporary obstacles standing between him and money he believed he deserved. When I got home, I did not turn on the television. I did not make tea. I did not even take off my coat at first. I stood in the hallway beneath the family photos and looked at Emily's face through the years. Emily at 6 years old, missing 2 front teeth. Emily in her high school cap and gown. Emily in her nursing uniform, smiling with Daniel's arm around her. Emily on her wedding day, looking up at Ryan like he had hung the moon. I touched that last photo with 2 fingers. "Please don't make me lose you too," I whispered. The next morning, Emily called just after 8. For one foolish second, I thought she was calling to say she was sorry. I thought maybe after a night alone with the truth, she had seen what Ryan had done clearly. But her voice was guarded. "Mom, we need to talk about last night." I sat down slowly at the kitchen table. "Yes, we do. Ryan feels terrible." I closed my eyes. "Not Ryan is wrong. Not Ryan needs to return the money. Ryan feels terrible. He should feel terrible," I said. "He panicked. He made a bad decision." "A bad decision is forgetting to pay a bill, Emily. Taking $250,000 from your widowed mother is not a bad decision. It is theft." She went quiet. Then she said, "Please don't use that word." And there it was, the first wall between us. "Why not?" I asked. "Because words like that make things worse." "No, actions like his make things worse. Mom, if you go to the police, it could ruin him." I gripped the edge of the table. "He ruined himself." "And what about me?" Her voice cracked. "What happens to my house, my credit, my job? Do you think people won't find out? Do you think this won't follow me too?" For a moment I could not speak, because underneath her words I heard Ryan's voice, his fear, his script. He had planted it in her like a seed, and now my daughter was repeating it back to me. "Emily," I said carefully, "are you afraid of what happens if I report him, or are you afraid of him?" "That's not fair." "It's a question." "No, Mom, it's an accusation. I'm trying to protect you." She gave a bitter little laugh that did not sound like her. "That's what Ryan said you would say." My heart sank. What else did Ryan say? "He said you would make this about betrayal instead of survival. He said you don't understand how business works. He said Dad handled everything for you for so long that you panic when money moves." The words struck one after another. "Dad handled everything for you. You panic. You don't understand. It was not only Ryan's theft I was facing now, it was the story he had built around me. A story where I was old, emotional, confused, dramatic. A story where he was the practical man who made a hard choice while I overreacted. That kind of lie is dangerous because it does not have to be entirely believable. It only has to make people hesitate." "Emily," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could, "your father and I saved that money together. I know exactly what it is. I know exactly what it was for. I know, Mom. Do you?" She exhaled shakily. "Ryan says he can put it back. When? He needs time. How much time, I don't know. Where's the money now?" Another silence. "Emily, I don't know," she whispered. That whisper broke my heart more than her anger had, because she did not know. She was defending a man whose secrets were stacked higher than she could see. "Then ask him," I said. "I have. And he says I need to trust him." I pressed my hand to my forehead. "Honey, trust is not a plan." She started crying then, softly at first, then harder. For a few seconds, she was not Ryan's wife or a nurse or a grown woman trying to hold together a collapsing life. She was my little girl again, scared and overwhelmed. My instinct was to comfort her, to soften, to tell her we would figure it out. But I had spent too many years teaching children to know the difference between comfort and enabling. Sometimes love has to be firm enough not to sink with the person you are trying to save. "I am going to call Thomas Bennett," I said. "Mom, please. I'm not filing anything today, but I am calling an attorney." Ryan said that would make everything official. It already is official. There are bank records. He said lawyers will twist everything. Ryan twisted everything before a lawyer ever entered the room. She cried harder. Then her voice changed. Smaller. More desperate. "Can you just wait? Give us a week, please. Let him fix it." "A week?" It sounded so harmless. 7 days. A small delay. A gesture of mercy. But something in me knew a week was exactly what Ryan wanted. A week to move money. A week to hide evidence. A week to coach Emily. A week to turn my pain into confusion. "I can't promise that," I said. Emily's crying stopped. When she spoke again, she sounded distant. "Then I don't know what you expect me to do. I expect you to see the truth. I'm trying to keep my marriage from exploding. It has already exploded. Ryan just wants you standing close enough to take the damage with him." She hung up. I sat there listening to the deadline, feeling as if someone had cut the last cord holding me to the life I knew. That afternoon, I did something I had not done in years. I walked next door to see my neighbor, Ruth Calder. Ruth was 73, widowed like me, and knew almost everything that happened on our street without ever seeming nosy. She had lived beside us since Emily was in middle school. She brought casseroles after Daniel died and never once asked questions I was not ready to answer. When she opened the door, she took one look at me and said, "Come in." I sat at her small breakfast table while she poured coffee. "I think Ryan took my savings," I said. Ruth did not gasp. She did not tell me I must be mistaken. She simply sat down across from me and said I was afraid something was wrong. My eyes lifted. "What do you mean?" She stirred cream into her coffee, though she did not drink it. "I didn't want to meddle," she said, "but I've seen him outside your house a few times when you weren't home." My stomach clenched. "When?" "Twice in March. Once early April. He parked down the street, not in your driveway. I thought maybe he was dropping something off." "He never told me." Ruth's face tightened. "There's more." I waited. One afternoon I saw him talking to a man beside his SUV. Not someone from around here. Big man, shaved head, dark pickup truck. They were arguing. At my house, across the street from it. The man pointed toward your place. Ryan looked furious. Then Ryan handed him something. An envelope, maybe. The room seemed to narrow. "Did you hear anything?" "Not much, just one thing. The man said, 'You said the old lady was handled.'" My body went cold. The old lady. Handled. I stared at Ruth, unable to breathe properly. She reached across the table and put her hand over mine. "Kimberly, I'm sorry, I should have told you sooner." "No," I whispered. "You're telling me now." For the first time since the bank, the pain inside me shifted. It was still there, but something else rose beside it. Clarity. Ryan had not panicked. He had not made one desperate mistake. He had been planning. Watching. Waiting. Talking about me to strangers as if I were a lock he had figured out how to open. And Emily still did not see it. Or maybe she was too frightened to admit she did. That evening, I went home and placed the bank folder, my notes from Ruth, and every memory I could recall into a neat stack on Daniel's desk. Then I took out a yellow legal pad and wrote at the top things Ryan said, things Ryan did, things I ignored. By midnight, the page was full. And at the bottom, with a hand that no longer shook, I wrote one final sentence. "I will not stay quiet just to keep his lies comfortable." The call came 3 days later, just after lunch. I was sitting at Daniel's desk with my yellow legal pad open in front of me, trying to put dates beside every strange thing Ryan had ever said. I had written and rewritten the same lines so many times that the page looked bruised from the pressure of my pen. Ryan asked about bank alerts February 12th. Ryan mentioned emergency access March 3rd. Ryan seen outside house by Ruth March, exact date unknown. Ryan said she already signed April 16th. I had not yet called Thomas Bennett. I kept telling myself I would do it after breakfast, then after lunch, then the next morning. The truth was, part of me still hesitated, not because I doubted what Ryan had done. The bank papers were clear. Ruth's words were clear. My own memory was clear now that I had stopped protecting him inside my head. But calling Thomas meant crossing a line. It meant admitting that my family problem had become a legal problem. It meant I might never get back the daughter I knew. The phone rang while I was staring at Daniel's framed photo on the corner of the desk. I expected Emily. Instead, the screen showed a number I did not recognize. Normally, I did not answer unknown calls. Ryan's warning about scammers had made me careful, even if he had used that fear against me. But that afternoon, something made me pick up. "Hello?" There was silence for half a second. Then, a woman's voice said, "Is this Kimberly Martin?" My hand tightened around the phone. "Who is calling?" "My name is Denise Walker. You don't know me, but I used to keep books for Ryan Carter." Every muscle in my body went still. I looked down at the legal pad at Ryan's name, circled twice. "What do you want?" I asked. "I think he took money from you." The room seemed to grow quiet around me. Outside, a lawnmower was running somewhere down the street. A dog barked once. The old clock in the hallway ticked steadily as if my life had not just shifted again. I forced myself to speak. "Why would you say that because he told someone he was going to?" My throat closed. Denise continued, her voice low and careful. "Mrs. Martin, I know this sounds strange. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I'm calling because I heard your name and I couldn't stay quiet this time." This time. Those two words carried weight. I sat back slowly. "What do you mean this time?" Denise exhaled. "Ryan has done things before. Not always the same way. Different people, different stories, but it always starts with trust, paperwork, and pressure." My first instinct was suspicion. Ryan had already taught me how easy it was for a friendly voice to hide a trap. "How did you get my number?" I asked. From an old vendor file. Ryan had emergency contact sheets scanned into his business folder. "Yours was there." My emergency contact sheet. Yes, the paper Ryan had taken to scan properly. A chill moved through me. "What exactly did you do for him?" I asked. "I was his bookkeeper for almost 4 years. Part-time at first, then more often when his records got messy. Messy, that's the polite word. I closed my eyes. Denise's voice softened. Mrs. Martin Ryan's company is not what he tells people it is. Carter Development Solutions has been behind on payments for months, maybe longer. He owes vendors, subcontractors, lenders, and at least 2 private financing groups that no honest business owner should be involved with. Private financing groups. I thought of Ruth's description. The big man, the dark pickup truck. You said the old lady was handled. I pressed my fingers to my lips. Denise must have heard the change in my breathing because she said, "Are you sitting down?" Yes. Good. How much does he owe? I asked. I don't know the full amount anymore. When I left, it was already over $300,000. That was before the penalty interest and before some of the cash advances. Cash advances. It was worse than Ryan had admitted. Why did you leave? I asked. Because he asked me to alter records. I opened my eyes. What records? Payment records, vendor balances, loan documents. He wanted certain transfers listed as project deposits when they weren't. He wanted personal expenses coded as business costs. At first, he made it sound like cleanup. Then one day, he asked me to backdate an invoice tied to a family transfer. A family transfer, I whispered. Yes. The room tilted in a familiar way, but this time I did not feel weak. I felt cold, alert. Was that me? I don't know. I quit before I processed it. But I heard your name later, where Denise paused. In a recording. My heart began pounding. What recording? I have a small recorder I used for meetings after Ryan started blaming me for missing paperwork. I wanted to protect myself. A few weeks ago, he met with a lender in his office. I was in the outer room sorting files. The door was not closed all the way. I could barely breathe. What did he say? Denise's voice grew quieter. He said, "The old lady won't fight it once her daughter talks her down." For a moment, I could not move. Not because I was surprised, because hearing my fear confirmed by a stranger made it real in a way even the bank papers had not. My daughter talks her down. So that had been the plan too. Not just take the money, use Emily to keep me quiet afterward. My eyes burned, but I refused to cry. Why are you calling me now? I asked. Because I saw the transfer hit. You still have access, no. But one of the subcontractors Ryan owes sent me a screenshot by mistake thinking I still handled accounts. It showed a large payment coming through Carter Development Solutions. The note said, Family Emergency Capital. I gripped the phone tighter. He called my life savings Family Emergency Capital. I'm sorry. That simple apology nearly broke me more than anything else she had said. For days, everyone around Ryan had made me feel dramatic, confused, inconvenient. Now, a stranger was saying the words my own daughter had not yet been able to say. I'm sorry. I swallowed hard. What do you want from me, Denise? I want to give you what I have. Why? Because he hurt other people. And because I didn't speak soon enough before. There was something in her voice then. Shame, maybe. Or grief. Were you one of them, I asked. Another pause. Yes, she said. Not like you. Not that much money. But he convinced me to delay my final pay when the business was struggling. Then he told people I had made errors. He tried to ruin my reputation so no one would believe me. I looked at Daniel's photo. A careful man would have asked questions. A careful man would have told me to document everything, trust evidence over emotion, and never let shame keep me silent. What kind of proof do you have, I asked. Emails, screenshots, a few account summaries, copies of invoices, names of lenders, and recordings. Does any of it mention me? One recording does? Maybe 2. I need to check. My hand trembled, but my voice did not. Send it. I can, but please be careful. Don't confront him with it yet. I already confronted him. I figured you might have. He says he borrowed the money. Denise gave a sad, humorless laugh. Ryan calls everything borrowing until someone makes him answer for it. I wrote that down. Ryan calls everything borrowing. Denise gave me her email address and asked if I had a secure one. I almost said yes, then stopped. Ryan had seen too much already. He had been in Daniel's desk. He had copied papers I did not fully understand. I'll make a new email, I said. Good. Don't use anything he might know. Before we hung up, she said one more thing. Mrs. Martin, yes, you are not the only one. Please remember that. Men like Ryan survive by making every victim feel alone and embarrassed. You are neither. After the call ended, I sat perfectly still. Then I cried. Not loudly, not the kind of crying that empties the whole body. Just silent tears that slipped down my face while I stared at the legal pad in front of me. You are not alone. For the first time since the bank, I believed that might be true. I made a new email address. My fingers moved slowly, carefully, as if I were learning a new language. Then I sent Denise one message. This is Kimberly Martin. Send everything. The first file arrived 12 minutes later, then another, then 6 more. I did not open them right away. I went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stood beside the sink looking out at the backyard where Daniel had planted lilacs years ago. They were beginning to bloom pale purple against the fence. For 3 days, Ryan had seemed larger than the truth. Now, finally, the truth had begun to gather its own weight. When I returned to the desk, I opened the first email. At the top was a forwarded message from Ryan to Denise. Subject line, temporary family capital solution. My stomach turned. Below it was a sentence I would never forget. Once Kimberly signs, Emily can keep her calm long enough for us to move fast. I read it once, then again. Then I printed it. By sunset, the stack on Daniel's desk was no longer just my memories and fears. It was evidence. And for the first time, Ryan Carter was not the only person with a plan. I spent the next morning reading what Denise sent me. At first, I opened each file carefully, almost politely, as if the documents deserved the same patience I had given Ryan. But after the third email, my hands began to shake so badly that I had to push my chair back from Daniel's desk and stand by the window. There were invoices marked paid that had never been paid. There were loan summaries with interest rates so high they looked less like business financing and more like punishment. There were screenshots of text messages where Ryan promised different people the same money, the same repayment date, the same confident lie. And then there were the messages about me. Not many, but enough. One email from Ryan to Denise said family access should clear next week. Once that happens, we can close the urgent balances and buy time. Another said Emily is emotional but manageable. Kimberly trusts her, so we use that route. I stared at the word use until the letters blurred. Use. He had not loved my daughter through this. He had used her. He had not supported me. He had studied me. Every kind gesture, every concern, every conversation about emergencies and planning suddenly rearranged itself in my memory. The soup, the roof, the paperwork, the urgent care visit, the careful questions. It all fit together now, not as family care, but as preparation. I opened the first audio file after lunch. For several minutes, I could not make myself press play. The little triangle on the screen seemed harmless, but I knew once I heard Ryan's voice there would be no pretending left. Documents were one thing. A voice was another. A voice made a lie breathe. Finally, I clicked it. At first, there was muffled movement. A chair scraped. A man coughed. Then Ryan's voice came through lower than usual, but unmistakable. I told you the money is coming. Another man answered. You told me that last month. I have access now. To what? A family account. There was a pause. Then the man said, whose family? Ryan gave a short laugh. Mine, basically. Old widow daughter's mother. She won't fight it. She barely understands what she signed. I stopped the recording. The room was silent. I pressed both hands over my mouth, not because I was about to scream, but because I was afraid I might make a sound that would never stop. Old widow. She barely understands. I thought of every child I had taught across 36 years. Every parent conference, every lesson plan, every bill I had paid after Daniel died, every hard decision I made alone. I thought of balancing a checkbook at midnight, choosing health insurance plans, managing taxes, scheduling repairs, burying my husband with dignity, and Ryan had reduced me to an old widow who barely understood. When I finally played the rest, it got worse. Ryan said the transfers would stabilize the situation. He said Emily could keep her mother from making noise. He said he only needed a few weeks before everything got blended into business recovery. The other man asked, what if she goes to the bank? Ryan answered. Then I show the authorization. It's signed. Signed. There was that word again. His shield. His weapon. I printed the transcript Denise had typed beneath the file, then wrote my own notes beside it. Time, date, context, Ryan's exact words. By evening, I had built 3 stacks on Daniel's desk. Bank records, Denise's documents, Ryan's statements. The longer I worked, the less helpless I felt. Pain was still there, sitting heavy in my chest, but it had shape now. It had paper. It had dates. It had names. It could be carried into an office and placed in front of someone who knew what to do. Then I opened the final attachment Denise had labeled, Important Emily. At first, I thought it would be another message about using my daughter to calm me down. It was not. It was a scanned loan application. The borrower name was Emily Carter. The signature looked like hers, but the email trail beneath it showed Denise asking Ryan, did Emily approve this? I don't have her confirmation. Ryan replied, she knows enough. Process it. Denise wrote back, that's not an answer. Ryan responded, then make it one. I leaned closer to the screen, my heart thudding. The loan amount was $85,000. Collateral listed household assets and future income. Contact phone Ryan's number. Email Ryan's business email. My daughter's name was on a loan she might not even know existed. For a moment, everything inside me shifted. Until then, part of me had still been angry at Emily, hurt by her silence, wounded by the way she asked me to wait to soften to protect Ryan from consequences. But now, I saw another possibility so clearly it made my stomach turn. Emily was not simply defending Ryan. She was trapped in a room he had built around her, and she did not yet know where the doors were. I printed the loan application with trembling hands. Then I called Denise. She answered immediately. "You saw it," she said. "Yes. I wasn't sure if I should send that one. You did the right thing." "Mrs. Martin, I need to tell you something. I never processed that application. I refused, but I don't know if Ryan found someone else to push it through later. Could he have forged her signature?" There was a long silence. "Yes," Denise said. "He could have." I closed my eyes. My poor Emily. My stubborn, tired, loyal Emily standing in her kitchen defending a husband who may have been stealing from her too. "Why didn't you go to the police?" I asked. The question came out harsher than I intended. Denise did not get defensive. "Because I was scared," she said, and ashamed. Ryan made it look like I was the one who had mishandled records. He told vendors I was unstable. He told one lender I had stolen files. By the time I realized how deep it went, I was trying to keep my own life from falling apart. I understood shame better than I wanted to. Shame was the reason I had not called Thomas yet. Shame was the reason I had sat alone with evidence instead of walking straight into a lawyer's office. Shame whispers that betrayal is somehow your failure because you trusted the wrong person. But trust is not a crime. Abusing trust is. After I hung up, I pulled Thomas Bennett's old business card from my address book. Daniel had kept it tucked behind our insurance papers for years. The edges were worn soft. Bennett and Lowe attorneys at law. Estate planning. Elder protection. Financial disputes. Elder protection. I had never noticed those words before. My finger hovered over the phone number. Then I thought of Ryan's voice in the recording. "She won't fight it." I dialed. Thomas's receptionist answered, cheerful and professional. When I gave my name, her tone warmed. "Mrs. Martin, Mr. Bennett will want to speak with you personally. Are you all right?" That question nearly undid me. "No," I said honestly. "But I'm ready to be." She put me on hold for less than a minute. Then Thomas Bennett came on the line. "Kimberly." His voice was older than I remembered, but steady. "What happened?" For the first time, I said it without softening the words. "My son-in-law took my savings, and I think he may have forged documents in my daughter's name too." Thomas did not interrupt. He did not gasp. He did not tell me to calm down. He simply said, "Gather every paper you have. Do not warn him. Do not discuss this with anyone who might tell him. Come to my office tomorrow morning at 9. I have recordings," I said. "Bring them. Bank documents. Bring those too. Emails. All of it." Then his voice changed quieter and firmer. "And Kimberly?" "Yes." "Daniel made certain arrangements before he died. I need to review your file, but there may be protections Ryan does not know about." My breath caught. "What protections? I don't want to speak too soon. But your husband was a careful man." For the first time in days, I looked at Daniel's photograph and felt something other than grief. I felt him beside me. Not in some magical way, not as a ghost or a sign, but in the careful choices he had made when he was still here loving me in the practical language he knew best. Paperwork, protection, preparation. After the call, I placed everything into a large folder. Then I made copies and placed those in a second folder, just as Daniel would have done. I saved the audio files to a flash drive and then to another one because Thomas had always said one copy of anything important was no copy at all. At midnight, Emily texted me. "Mom, please don't do anything tomorrow. Ryan says he has a plan." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "So do I." I did not explain. I did not argue. I put the phone face down, turned off the desk lamp, and rested my hand on Daniel's chair. For the first time since my savings disappeared, I slept. Not peacefully, but with the knowledge that the next morning I would stop being Ryan's silent victim and start becoming his problem. Thomas Bennett's office was in an old brick building near downtown Columbus, wedged between a title company and a small accounting firm. Daniel used to say Thomas chose that building because it looked like it had already survived every kind of trouble a person could bring through the door. That morning I understood what he meant. I arrived 20 minutes early and sat in my car with both folders on my lap. One held the originals, the other held copies. The flash drives were tucked in a small zippered pouch inside my purse. I had slept, but not enough. My eyes felt swollen, my shoulders ached, and my stomach had been tied in knots since sunrise. Still, I was there. That mattered. When I stepped inside Thomas's receptionist, Carol stood up before I reached the desk. "Mrs. Martin," she said softly, "Mr. Bennett is ready for you." Thomas came out himself. He was 71 tall but slightly stooped now, with silver hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and the same calm expression I remembered from Daniel's funeral. He did not rush toward me with pity. He did not make a fuss. He simply held out both hands and took mine. "Kimberly," he said, "I'm sorry you're facing this." Those words almost weakened me, but then he added, "Now let's get to work." That saved me. His office smelled like leather coffee and old books. Diplomas hung on the wall, along with a framed photo of Thomas and Daniel standing beside a fishing boat years ago. Seeing Daniel's smile there nearly stopped me, but Thomas noticed and quietly turned the photo face down. "Only if it helps," he said. I nodded grateful. For the next 2 hours, Thomas reviewed everything. He read the bank forms first. Slowly. Carefully. He used a red pen and small sticky notes marking clauses and circling dates. Every now and then his expression shifted, but he did not interrupt himself with anger. That was Thomas's way. He let evidence speak fully before he answered it. When he reached the authorization form Ryan had used, his jaw tightened. "This is not a simple emergency document," he said. "I didn't understand that when I signed. I believe you." Those 3 words settled over me like a blanket. I believe you. No arguing. No doubt. No warning that I should have known better. Just belief. Thomas tapped the paper. This document was written to appear limited while granting broader access through vague language. "See here, household medical debt and family emergency purposes." That phrase is dangerously broad. Ryan said it was temporary. It does not meaningfully limit him to temporary action. My face burned. So I gave him permission. Thomas looked up sharply. "No. You were misled. There is a difference." I looked down. He continued. "A signature obtained through deception, pressure, or misrepresentation may be challenged, especially when an older adult is involved and the person benefiting from the signature helped explain the document." Older adult. I had always hated phrases like that. They made me feel shelved. But that morning, the words did not sound insulting. They sounded protective. Thomas moved to the bank transfers next, then Denise's emails, then the audio transcripts. When he heard Ryan say, "She won't fight it," Thomas removed his glasses and laid them on the desk. For a long moment, he was silent. Then he said, "That may be one of the most useful things he could have said." Useful. It shows intent. Intent. A simple word, but it changed everything. Ryan had tried to make the theft look like a misunderstanding, a desperate family decision, a financial mess. But intent cut through excuses. Intent meant he knew what he was doing before he did it. Thomas opened another folder from his locked file cabinet. My name was written on the tab. Kimberly Martin Estate and Asset Planning. My breath caught. I thought everything was settled after Daniel died. Most of it was, Thomas said. But Daniel asked me to prepare additional protections. He was worried about 2 things, your independence and future financial pressure from relatives. I stared at him. Relatives. He did not name Ryan specifically. This was years ago. But Daniel had seen enough insurance claims involving family disputes to know grief and money can bring out the worst in people. My eyes filled. That sounded exactly like Daniel. Practical love. Quiet protection. Thomas pulled out a document I vaguely remembered signing after Daniel's diagnosis, when the world had been moving too fast and every paper felt like one more step toward losing him. "This is a protected retirement reserve agreement," Thomas said. "Not a trust in the traditional sense, but part of your asset plan. A portion of Daniel's life insurance and retirement rollover was designated for your sole benefit with restrictions against unauthorized third-party claims." I don't understand. It means Ryan may have moved money, but some of the funds he touched were not supposed to be transferable for his benefit under the terms attached to them. If the bank accepted the authorization without reviewing those restrictions, we may have grounds to pressure reversal or reimbursement. For the first time, I felt air enter my lungs fully. "So the money isn't just gone. I will not promise anything yet," Thomas said. "But no, I would not assume it is gone." I pressed my hand over my heart. Thomas continued. "We need to act quickly and quietly. Ryan believes the signed authorization protects him. That confidence may make him careless. He already knows I talked to the bank. That's fine. But he must not know what Denise sent you or what Daniel put in place." I nodded. "What do I do?" "First, we notify the bank formally that you dispute the transfers and allege financial exploitation, misrepresentation, and misuse of authorization. Second, I contact their legal department, not just the branch manager. Third, we preserve all evidence. Fourth, we determine whether the loan in Emily's name exists anywhere." My stomach tightened again. "Can you check that?" "With Emily's cooperation easily. Without it more slowly." "I don't know if she'll cooperate." Thomas folded his hands. "Then we give her truth, not pressure." "There is a difference." I thought of Emily crying on the phone asking me to wait. I thought of Ryan telling her I would destroy her life. I thought of the loan application with her name on it. "I'm afraid she'll choose him," I whispered. Thomas's expression softened. "She may for a while. People under control often defend the person controlling them because admitting the truth feels like losing their whole life at once." That sentence hurt because it sounded true. "Does that mean I should wait?" "No," he said firmly. "It means you protect yourself while leaving a door open for her." Protect myself. For years, I had thought protecting family meant absorbing pain quietly, being patient, being generous, not making trouble. But Thomas was telling me that protection could look different. It could look like boundaries, documents, legal notices, refusing to let another person's crisis become your destruction. Before I left, Thomas made copies of everything. He placed the flash drives in evidence envelopes, labeled and dated them, and gave me a written list of instructions. Do not speak with Ryan alone. Do not sign anything. Do not delete messages. Do not warn Denise's name has been shared. Forward any threats immediately. Then he looked at me over the paper. "And Kimberly, one more thing. Yes, if Ryan comes to your house, do not let him in." The thought made me cold. "Do you think he will?" "I think men like Ryan prefer control. When they feel it slipping, they try to get it back." On the drive home, I felt different. Not safe, not yet, but no longer blind. That afternoon, Thomas sent the first legal notice to Franklin Community Bank. By 5 o'clock, I received a call from Alan Pierce, the branch manager. His voice was much more careful than it had been before. "Mrs. Martin, our legal department, has received Mr. Bennett's letter. We are escalating the matter internally." Internally, a word banks used when ordinary politeness was no longer enough. "Thank you," I said. "We may need additional documentation. My attorney will provide it." There was a pause. "Of course." After I hung up, my phone buzzed again almost immediately. "Ryan." I did not answer. He called 3 more times. Then a text arrived. "We need to talk before you make a mistake you can't undo." I forwarded it to Thomas. A minute later, Thomas replied, "Do not respond." So I didn't. I sat at Daniel's desk phone face down, hands folded, listening to the quiet house around me. Ryan had spent months counting on my fear, my politeness, my love for Emily, and my shame. But he had missed one thing. Daniel had loved me too. And long before Ryan ever walked into my kitchen with a folder my husband had left behind a shield Ryan never saw coming. Ryan came to my house the next evening. I had expected a call, maybe another text, maybe some carefully worded apology sent through Emily. But a little after 7, just as the sky outside turned gray-blue and the streetlights flickered on, headlights swept across my living room wall. I looked through the front window and saw his SUV at the curb, not in the driveway. At the curb, as if he did not want to appear too comfortable, but also did not want to leave. My phone buzzed. "Ryan, I'm outside. We need to talk." I did not answer. A minute later, the doorbell rang. I stood in the hallway looking at the door, Thomas's warning echoing in my mind. "If Ryan comes to your house, do not let him in." The bell rang again. Then came a knock. Kimberly Ryan called through the door. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "I know you're home." My first instinct was fear. My second was anger at myself for being afraid inside my own home. I picked up my phone and turned on the voice recorder. Then I placed it in the pocket of my cardigan. I did not open the door all the way. I slipped the chain lock into place and opened it only a few inches. Ryan stood on my porch wearing a dark jacket and the expression of a man who had practiced humility in the mirror. His hair was neat. His face was tired in a way that almost looked convincing. "Almost. You shouldn't be here," I said. "I know you're upset." "Upset is what I feel when the grocery store is out of something. This is different." His jaw tightened, but he quickly softened his face. "Can I come in?" "No." He glanced at the chain. Something bitter flashed in his eyes. "Really, we're doing this now?" "Yes." He lowered his voice. "Kimberly, I came here to fix this. You can fix it by returning my money." "I'm working on that." "No. You're working on buying time." He leaned closer to the opening. "Who have you been talking to?" There it was. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "I'm sorry, who have you been talking to?" I kept my face still. "The bank." "Who else?" "My attorney." His expression hardened before he could hide it. "Thomas Bennett has no idea what he's getting into. He knows enough." Ryan looked over his shoulder at the quiet street, then back at me. "You don't understand the damage you're about to cause." "I understand the damage you already caused." He exhaled sharply. "You think this is simple because you've never had to run a business. You've never had men threatening your livelihood, your home, your family. Do not make yourself the victim on my porch. I am trying to protect Emily. I almost laughed. You used Emily. His eyes narrowed. Careful. The word came out low. For a second, the porch felt colder. I remembered my phone recording in my pocket and my courage steadied. Is that a threat, I asked? Ryan's face changed. He gave a short laugh. Don't be dramatic. Then speak clearly. He looked past me into the hallway toward the family photos. You're going to lose her, you know. My hand tightened on the door. If you keep pushing this, he said, Emily will never forgive you. That is between Emily and me. No, it's between all of us. You're dragging her into legal trouble she doesn't deserve. You dragged her in when you put her name on things she didn't understand. His face went still. For one brief moment, I knew I had struck something real. What did she tell you? He asked. Enough. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She hasn't told me anything yet. The mistake registered in his eyes. He had revealed more than he meant to. I let the silence stretch. Ryan stepped closer to the door. Listen to me. If Thomas starts digging into Emily's financial records, he will find things that make her look responsible. My stomach turned, but I kept my voice steady. Things you did? Things with her signature. Did she sign them? He smiled then, and it was the ugliest thing I had ever seen on his face. Does that matter as much as you think it does? The words hung between us. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. Yes, I said. It matters. Not when paperwork says otherwise. That was when I understood why he had come. Not to apologize, not to repair anything. He came to make me feel trapped by the same weapon he had used from the beginning. Paper, signatures, technicalities. He wanted me to believe the truth was weaker than the documents he controlled. Ryan lowered his voice again. Kimberly, I'm going to say this once. Back off. Give me 30 days. I will move things around, settle the urgent debt, and begin repayment. Move what things around? Don't ask questions you don't want answers to. Ryan. His name came out like a warning. He looked at me through the narrow opening and all his polished charm disappeared. You think you're being brave, he said, but you're putting everyone in danger. From whom? He did not answer. The men Ruth saw outside my house, I asked. His face drained slightly. It was subtle, but I saw it. Ruth talks too much, he said. So it was true. I said she talks too much. And what did that man mean when he said I was handled? Ryan's hand shot up and pressed against the door. Not enough to break the chain. Enough to make the wood shake. I stepped back. Stop digging, he said. There was no softness now. No family. No mom. No concern. Just the man underneath. For 1 second, fear rose so fast I could taste metal. Then I remembered Daniel, Thomas, Denise, the recorder in my pocket. And I remembered myself. I was not a helpless woman waiting for someone else to decide what happened next. I was Kimberly Martin. This was my house. Take your hand off my door, I said. He stared at me. Now. Slowly he lowered his hand. You'll regret this, he said. No, Ryan. I regret trusting you. That's different. His face twisted. You know Emily was right. You do make everything about yourself. That hurt. He knew it would, but it no longer worked the way it once had. No, I said. I made everything about family. That's how you got close enough to steal from me. He stepped back, breathing hard. Then, as if remembering the role he had come to play, he smoothed his jacket and forced a calmer tone. I didn't steal. I borrowed under authorization. Keep using words like theft and fraud and you may find yourself accused of making false claims. There's a recording device in my pocket, I said. Ryan froze. For the first time since I had known him, Ryan Carter looked truly unprepared. His eyes dropped to my cardigan, then back to my face. You recorded me? Yes. You can't do that. I can record a conversation I'm part of. He opened his mouth, then closed it. All the confidence drained from his posture in small degrees. I leaned closer to the opening, my voice quiet. Leave my property. He stared at me a moment longer, then turned sharply and walked down the porch steps. At the sidewalk, he looked back. This won't save you, he said. Then he got into his SUV and drove away. I closed the door, locked it, and stood there trembling so hard I had to lean against the wall. The fear came after he left. That surprised me. During the confrontation, I had felt almost calm. But once the engine faded down the street, my knees weakened. I called Thomas with shaking hands. He answered on the second ring. Kimberly. He was here. Are you safe? Yes. I didn't let him in. Good. Tell me everything. I recorded it. There was a pause. Then Thomas said, Send it to me now. I did. 10 minutes later, he called back. His voice was controlled, but I could hear the urgency underneath. Kimberly. This is important. He made several statements that help us. He threatened me. Yes. And he implied knowledge of questionable documents involving Emily. He also referenced danger connected to his lenders. What happens now? Now we escalate. That word should have frightened me. Instead, it steadied me. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea I did not drink. My house was quiet again. The porch light glowed through the curtains. The door was locked. My phone sat beside me holding Ryan's own words. For months, he had depended on silence. Mine, Emily's, Denise's, even Ruth's. But silence was breaking one voice at a time, and Ryan had just added his own. The next morning, I knew I could not protect Emily from the truth anymore. For days, I had told myself I was waiting for the right moment, waiting until Thomas had more information, waiting until Emily sounded calmer, waiting until I could speak without crying. But the truth was simpler and harder than that. I was afraid to watch my daughter's heart break. A mother spends her whole life trying to soften the sharp edges of the world for her child. When they are little, you move the coffee table so they do not hit their head. You cut grapes in half. You check bathwater with your wrist. You stand between them and danger without thinking. But no one tells you what to do when your child is grown and the danger is sleeping beside her. Thomas called at 10. I pulled preliminary records, he said. I cannot confirm every loan yet, but there are indicators that Ryan used Emily's information in at least one application. My knees weakened and I sat down at Daniel's desk. Does that mean her signature was forged? It means there are enough irregularities that she needs to know immediately. She should check her credit reports, freeze her credit, and speak with independent counsel if necessary. Independent from me. Independent from Ryan, Thomas said gently. She must understand that his interests are not hers. I looked at the photo of Emily in her nursing uniform. She won't want to believe it. No, he said. She won't. After we hung up, I called Emily. She did not answer. I called again. This time she picked up, voice low and tired. Mom, I'm at work. I need to see you today. I can't do this right now. It's about your name, Emily, not mine. Yours. There was silence. What does that mean? It means Ryan may have used your signature. She exhaled sharply. Mom, please don't defend him before you see what I have. Her voice trembled. What do you have? Documents, emails, a recording of what Ryan talking about me, and maybe about you. She did not speak for so long I thought she had hung up. Then she whispered, I get off at 4. Come to my house. Is Thomas going to be there? Only if you want him there. Another pause. No, she said. Just you. At 4:30, Emily pulled into my driveway. I watched from the front window as she sat in her car for almost 3 minutes before opening the door. She looked smaller than usual when she walked up the path. No makeup, hair pulled back, shoulders rounded. She was still in her scrubs, and for a moment I saw the exhausted nurse who had cared for strangers all day while her own life waited to collapse. When I opened the door, she did not hug me. That hurt, but I stepped aside. The folders were already on the kitchen table. I had made tea neither of us would drink. Beside the folders sat a box of tissues. Emily looked at the papers, then at me. Is this going to make me hate him? She asked. I answered honestly, yes. Her face crumpled for half a second, then she swallowed it down. Show me. I started with the bank records because they were factual. Dates, amounts, transfers to Carter Development Solutions, the authorization form. The language Ryan had never explained. Emily stared at the pages. I didn't know he moved that much, she whispered. I believe you. She looked up quickly as if she had expected me to accuse her. I was angry, I said. I was hurt, but I believe you didn't know the whole truth. Her eyes filled with tears. Then I showed her Ryan's email. Kimberly trusts her, so we use that route. Emily read it once, then again. The color drained from her face. He wrote this, yes. To Denise, yes. He said I was emotional but manageable, I nodded. She pushed the paper away like it had burned her. No, she whispered. No, he talks like that when he's stressed. He doesn't mean Emily. She looked at me. Listen to the recording. Her hands began shaking. I don't know if I can. You need to. I pressed play. Ryan's voice filled my kitchen. The old lady won't fight it once her daughter talks her down. Emily closed her eyes. Then came the next part. She barely understands what she signed. A tear slipped down Emily's cheek. Then Ryan said, Emily is emotional but manageable. That was when my daughter broke. Not with loud sobs, not dramatically. She simply folded forward one hand over her mouth, making a small sound that reminded me of when she was a child trying not to cry after falling off her bike. I reached for her but stopped halfway. She had to decide whether she wanted my comfort. A moment later, she reached for my hand. I held on. I'm sorry, she whispered. Mom, I'm so sorry. My own tears came then. I know, I believed him. I know, I made you feel crazy. You were scared. That doesn't excuse it. No, I said softly. But it explains some of it. She cried harder. For a few minutes, we sat there with the papers between us, holding hands across the table like we were on opposite sides of a river that had once been our family. Then I pulled out the final document. Emily, there's something else. She wiped her face. What? This is a loan application Denise found. I turned it toward her. She stared at the page. Then her face changed completely. That's my name. Yes, that's not my email. I know, that's Ryan's phone number. Yes. She grabbed the paper, scanning it faster now. $85,000. What is this? We don't know if it was processed. Her voice rose. Processed, Mom. I never signed this. The room went still. Are you sure? Her eyes snapped to mine. Yes, I'm sure. I would remember signing a loan for $85,000. I pointed to the signature. Her hand flew to her mouth. It looks like mine, she whispered. But it isn't, no. She stood so fast the chair scraped against the floor. Oh my God! Emily! He forged my signature. We don't know everything yet. He forged my signature. Her voice was firmer now, almost numb. He has my social security number, my tax records, my pay stubs. He handles the mortgage folder. He always said it was easier if he kept everything together. Then she looked at me, and the fear in her eyes was the clearest truth I had seen from her in weeks. Mom, he controls all of it. My heart broke all over again. Your accounts, she nodded slowly. He knows the passwords. He said married people shouldn't hide things. Your paycheck. It goes into the joint account first. Credit cards. He pays them. Or he says he does. The kitchen seemed to close in around us. Ryan had not only stolen from me, he had built a financial cage around my daughter and called it marriage. Emily sat back down, shaking. What do I do? Those 4 words were the beginning of her coming back to me. I moved closer. First, you call Thomas. She hesitated. He's my lawyer. He can still tell you what steps to take, and he can recommend someone separate if you need it. What if Ryan finds out? He will. She looked terrified. I took both of her hands. Then we make sure you are not alone when he does. For the first time, Emily leaned into me. I wrapped my arms around her and she cried against my shoulder like she had been holding back years of fear, confusion, and excuses. I thought I was protecting my marriage, she sobbed. I know. I thought if I loved him enough, he'd stop hiding things. Oh, honey. He made me feel like every question was betrayal. I closed my eyes. That was Ryan's true gift, turning other people's boundaries into guilt. When she finally calmed, we called Thomas together. He told Emily to freeze her credit immediately, change passwords from a device Ryan could not access, open a separate bank account, and gather her identification documents, pay stubs, tax returns, and any loan or mortgage papers she could safely collect. Do not confront him alone, Thomas said. Emily looked at me. I won't, she whispered. After the call, she stayed in my kitchen until the sun went down. We made a list. It was not a perfect plan, but it was a beginning. Before she left, she stood at the door and looked back at the family photos in the hall. I don't know who I married, she said. I touched her shoulder. Maybe not, but you know who you are. She started crying again, but this time she hugged me first. And when she drove away, she was not going home to defend Ryan. She was going home to quietly collect the pieces of herself he thought he owned. 3 days later, Ryan asked for a family meeting. He did not call me himself. He sent the message through Emily, which told me he was still trying to use her as a bridge he could walk across safely. Mom, Ryan wants to meet at our house Sunday afternoon. He says he wants to explain everything and make a repayment plan. I stared at the message for a long time. Then another came. Thomas can come if you want. That last sentence told me Emily had changed. The old Emily, the one still trapped inside Ryan's version of the world, would have begged me to come alone to stay calm to avoid embarrassing him. This Emily was giving me a choice. This Emily was making space for protection. I called Thomas before I answered. Should I go? I asked. Only with precautions, he said. Do not bring original documents. Keep your phone charged. I can be available by phone, but I would rather not attend in person unless Ryan knows beforehand. Why, if I appear suddenly, he may refuse to speak. Right now, he believes he can still control the conversation. That may make him reveal more. I thought of the recorder in my cardigan pocket, of Ryan's hand against my door, of his voice saying, stop digging. I don't want Emily alone with him afterward. Then arrange for her to leave with you if needed. She might not. She might, Thomas said. Give her the option. On Sunday, I wore a navy cardigan Daniel had always liked and placed copies of the bank transfers in my purse. My phone was fully charged. Thomas knew the time of the meeting. Denise had sent one more file that morning, a screenshot from a lender showing Ryan had promised incoming family capital as collateral for a private debt. Family capital. I wondered if men like Ryan ever heard how ugly their language was. When I arrived at Emily's house, 2 other cars were already there. Emily's best friend Melissa was in the living room. So was Ryan's older brother Mark. I had not expected them. Ryan stood near the fireplace with his hands in his pockets, wearing a gray sweater and an expression of wounded dignity. "Kimberly," he said. "Not Mom. Never Mom anymore." Emily came to my side immediately. She looked pale but steady. "I asked Melissa to come," she whispered. "I didn't want to be alone in this." I squeezed her hand. Ryan noticed and looked away. Mark Carter was sitting on the sofa, arms crossed. He was a broad man with tired eyes and the same jawline as Ryan, though his face carried less polish and more honesty. I had only met him a few times over the years. He worked as an auto mechanic near Dayton and had never seemed impressed by Ryan's business talk. "I'm here because Ryan said this is a misunderstanding," Mark said. His voice was blunt. "I'd like to hear how stealing from your mother-in-law gets misunderstood." Ryan's face darkened. "Thanks for coming with an open mind." "Earn one," Mark said. For a moment, I almost smiled. Ryan clapped his hands once softly as if calling a meeting to order. "Okay, everybody is emotional. I understand that. But I want to start by saying I made mistakes." Emily's mouth tightened. "Mistakes?" I repeated. Ryan looked at me with practiced patience. "Yes, mistakes. I should have communicated better." Melissa gave a small snort. Ryan ignored her. "I moved funds under legal authorization during a severe financial emergency. My intention was always repayment. I never meant to hurt Kimberly." I listened silently. He continued, growing more confident as he spoke. "The problem is that certain people have gotten involved and turned this into something criminal when it is actually a family financial matter." "Certain people," Emily asked. "Lawyers, former employees with grudges, people who don't care what happens to this family." I looked at him. "Denise has records." His eyes flashed. "Denise is unstable," Funny Mark said. "That's what you call everybody who has paperwork." Ryan turned on him. "You don't know anything about my business. I know you borrowed $5,000 from me last year and told me not to mention it to Emily." Emily's head snapped toward Ryan. Ryan froze. Mark leaned forward. "Yeah, I wondered if that would come up." Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. "You borrowed from Mark?" "It was temporary," Ryan said. "That word again," I said softly. Ryan pointed at me. "This is exactly what I mean. You're all piling on instead of letting me fix it." "How?" Emily asked. "I have a plan." "What plan? A restructuring plan." "Real words, Ryan." His face tightened. Emily stepped closer to the coffee table, her hands shaking, but her voice stronger than I had heard it in months. "Where is my mother's money?" Ryan looked around the room as if searching for a friendly face and finding none. It went to urgent obligations. "What obligations?" "Business debts. And private lenders," I asked. His eyes cut to me. Melissa looked confused. "Private lenders?" Emily turned toward Ryan. "The men who were calling you." Ryan's mouth flattened. "You went through my phone. I didn't have to. You left enough fear in every room for me to know." That sentence landed hard. Ryan's confidence cracked. He looked at Emily differently, then not as a wife he could guide back into place, but as a person slipping out of reach. "You need to be very careful," he said. Mark stood. "Don't talk to her like that." Ryan held up his hands. "I'm warning her because I love her." "No," Emily said. "You warn people when you're losing control." Silence filled the room. Then my phone rang. The sound was so sudden that everyone turned toward me. I looked down. Thomas Bennett. My heart began to pound. I answered and put it on speaker, not because I had planned to, but because something in me knew this moment was no longer private. "Thomas," I said. "Kimberly, are you with Emily?" "Yes. Is Ryan present?" Ryan's face changed. I looked at him. "Yes." Thomas's voice remained calm, professional, almost gentle. "Then, listen carefully. The bank's legal department has placed a hold on remaining related accounts connected to Carter Development Solutions pending investigation. They have also flagged the transfers from your protected reserve as disputed exploitation transactions." Ryan went completely still. Emily whispered, "What does that mean?" Thomas continued, "It means no further movement of those funds should occur. Additionally, the preliminary review found that at least one transfer violated restrictions attached to Daniel's protected reserve agreement." Ryan's face drained of color. For once, he did not interrupt. Thomas said, "Kimberly, there is more. A creditor contacted my office this morning through counsel. They are willing to provide records showing Ryan pledged expected funds from your account before you signed the authorization." My hand tightened around the phone. Ryan stared at me as if I had become someone he did not recognize. Thomas's voice sharpened slightly. "And financial crimes investigators have been notified. They may contact you and Emily directly. Melissa covered her mouth. Mark muttered, "Good Lord." Emily stood frozen beside me. Ryan finally found his voice. "That's not possible." Thomas heard him. "Mr. Carter," he said, "I strongly advise you not to make any further statements without counsel." Ryan's mouth opened, then closed. The man who always had an answer had none. The room felt suspended. This was the moment from the beginning, the call that froze him in place, not because Thomas shouted, not because police burst through the door, but because Ryan finally understood that the story had moved beyond his kitchen, his excuses, his paperwork, and his control. Someone outside the family knew. The bank knew. The attorney knew. A creditor knew. Investigators would know. Ryan looked at Emily. "You did this?" Emily's face was wet with tears, but her voice was steady. "No, you did." He flinched as if she had struck him. Then his phone began to buzz. Once, twice, 3 times. He looked down at the screen and went even paler. Mark stepped toward him. "Who is it?" Ryan did not answer. But I knew. Maybe a lender. Maybe one of the men Ruth had seen. Maybe someone who had just learned the money he promised was frozen. For the first time, Ryan Carter looked like a man trapped inside the very net he had woven. Thomas spoke again through my phone. "Kimberly, leave the house now if you feel unsafe." I looked at Emily. She was already reaching for her purse. "I'm coming with you," she said. Ryan took 1 step forward. "Emily, don't." She stopped, but she did not turn around. "You don't get to tell me what to do anymore." Then she walked past him. I followed with my phone still in my hand, Thomas still on the line, Melissa behind us, and Mark standing between Ryan and the door. As we stepped into the afternoon sunlight, my daughter slipped her hand into mine. Behind us, Ryan's phone kept ringing, and this time no one was there to help him answer it. For a long time, I believed justice would feel loud. I imagined shouting, doors slamming, someone finally pointing at Ryan and saying what everyone had been too polite to say. I imagined a moment so clear and powerful that all the pain would leave my body at once. But justice did not arrive like thunder. It arrived through phone calls, forms, signatures, case numbers, and quiet conversations with people who spoke in careful professional voices. The first official call came 2 mornings after the family meeting. A woman from the bank's fraud review department contacted Thomas. Then Thomas called me. He explained that the transfers Ryan had made were now under formal dispute. Because a portion of the money came from Daniel's protected reserve, the bank could no longer treat the matter as a simple, authorized transaction. "They are reviewing whether their internal safeguards failed," Thomas said. "What does that mean for my money?" "It means they have incentive to resolve this carefully." I had learned by then that lawyers rarely said, "This is good news," outright. But I could hear it under his words. By the end of that week, 2 things happened. First, the bank confirmed that a large portion of the transferred funds had not yet fully left accounts connected to Ryan's business. The legal hold prevented him from moving what remained. Second, Emily discovered 3 credit inquiries she did not recognize. She came to my house with printed reports in her hands, pale and shaking. "I feel like I don't even own my own name anymore," she said. I pulled her into my arms. That was the cruelty of what Ryan had done. He had not only stolen money, he had stolen certainty. He made both of us question our judgment, our safety, our memories, even our right to be angry. Thomas referred Emily to an attorney named Rachel Monroe, who specialized in financial abuse and divorce. Emily hesitated when she heard the word divorce, but she did not reject it. That told me more than any speech could have. "I don't know if I'm ready," she told me. "You don't have to decide everything today. I just know I can't go back like nothing happened. That's enough for today." The investigators came the following Monday. 2 of them sat with me at my kitchen table. One was a calm woman named Agent Harris. The other was a younger man who took notes and asked precise questions. They were not dramatic. They did not treat my life like a television episode. They asked about dates, documents, conversations, signatures, and Ryan's visit to my house. When I played the recording from the porch, Agent Harris looked up only once. That was when Ryan said, "Does that matter as much as you think it does?" She wrote something down. Later, she said, "Mrs. Martin, cases like this often depend on patterns. Your documentation helps." Patterns. That word stayed with me. Ryan wanted each act to seem separate. A misunderstanding here, a debt there, a temporary transfer, a signature, a stressful business problem. But together they formed a pattern no excuse could hide. Denise gave her statement too. So did Ruth. So did Mark. I did not expect Mark to help us as much as he did. But once he understood the full story, he brought forward text messages where Ryan had asked for money and promised repayment from family funds clearing soon. Mark looked ashamed when he handed them over. "I should have known," he said. I surprised myself by answering, "We all think that after someone fools us." Ryan's world began shrinking quickly after that. Vendors came forward. A subcontractor admitted Ryan had promised payment from an incoming family transfer before I ever signed anything. A lender's attorney confirmed Ryan had described my savings as available collateral. The forged loan application in Emily's name became part of a separate investigation. Ryan tried to call Emily constantly at first. She did not answer. Then he sent long messages. "I did this for us. Your mother poisoned you against me. You know I would never hurt you. Everything can still be fixed if you come home." Emily read them at my kitchen table with Rachel on speakerphone. Then she blocked him. I watched her press the button and her hand trembled afterward. Not because she wanted him back, because even freedom can feel frightening when someone has trained you to fear it. A week later, Ryan was questioned. He was not dragged away in handcuffs in front of the neighborhood. There was no dramatic scene in the driveway. Thomas told me later that Ryan had gone in with an attorney expecting to explain everything as a business misunderstanding. But explanations have limits when records are stronger than charm. The charges did not come all at once, but the direction was clear: financial exploitation of an older adult, fraud, misuse of authorization, and suspected forgery connected to Emily's documents. When Thomas told me, I sat quietly for a long time. "Kimberly," he asked, "I thought I would feel happier." "No," he said gently. "You feel tired because you loved the people connected to the damage." That was exactly it. Ryan deserved consequences. I knew that with every part of me. But justice did not erase the memory of him fixing my faucet sitting at Thanksgiving dinner, calling me mom. It did not erase Emily's wedding photos or the years we believed he belonged to us. It only told the truth about what he had done. The money came back in pieces. First, the bank restored the portion tied directly to the protected reserve while continuing its internal review. Then, more funds were recovered from frozen business accounts. Thomas negotiated aggressively, and the bank, eager to avoid deeper liability, agreed to reimburse additional losses connected to their failure to verify the unusual transfers. I did not recover every dollar immediately, but I recovered enough to breathe again, enough to fix the roof, enough to pay my bills, enough to know Daniel's promise had not been completely stolen. The day the first restored funds appeared in my account, I drove to the cemetery. I brought Daniel yellow roses because he used to say red ones were too dramatic and white ones looked like apologies. I stood beside his grave with my hands in my coat pockets and cried harder than I had cried in weeks. "You were right," I whispered. "I hated that you were right, but you were." The wind moved through the trees. There was no answer, of course, but I felt less alone. Emily separated from Ryan that same month. She moved into a small apartment near the hospital at first, then stayed with me some weekends when the silence became too heavy. She filed police reports for the suspected identity misuse. She opened her own account. She changed every password. She cried when her paycheck deposited into an account only she controlled. "I didn't realize how much I had given away," she said. I told her, "You can take it back one piece at a time." Ryan's brother Mark helped her move. He carried boxes without making speeches. At the end, he stood in my driveway and said, "I'm sorry my brother did this." I believed him. "Thank you for telling the truth," I said. He nodded, eyes red, then drove away. As for Ryan, I never spoke to him again. Through attorneys, he tried to frame himself as desperate, overwhelmed, pressured by dangerous lenders, and misunderstood by vindictive women. But the recordings, emails, bank records, and witness statements told another story. He had not made one desperate choice. He had built a system of lies and expected all of us to live inside it. The greatest relief was not seeing him punished. It was seeing Emily stop defending him. One evening, she came over after a meeting with Rachel and found me in the kitchen reviewing roof repair estimates. She stood in the doorway for a moment. "Mom." "Yes, honey. I kept thinking love meant standing beside your husband no matter what." I set down the papers. She swallowed hard. But standing beside someone while they destroy other people isn't love. It's disappearing. I walked over and hugged her. That was when I knew we were going to survive this. Not unchanged, not untouched, but alive. And finally, honest. Healing did not begin with forgiveness. It began with small, ordinary choices that made the world feel steady again. The first thing I did after the funds were partially restored was fix the roof. Not because it was the most emotional decision, but because every time rain tapped against the ceiling, I remembered standing in the bank learning my savings were gone. I needed the house to stop leaking. I needed one problem in my life to have a clear beginning, middle, and end. The roofers came on a bright Monday morning. 3 men climbed ladders, carried shingles, hammered, scraped, and shouted to each other over the wind. I sat at the kitchen table with coffee, listening to the noise above me. For the first time in months, the sound of work being done did not frighten me. It comforted me. Emily came over on her lunch break that day with sandwiches from a deli near the hospital. She stood in the driveway looking up at the roof, one hand shielding her eyes from the sun. "Dad would be happy," she said. "He would complain about the price first." She laughed. It was a small laugh, tired, a little broken at the edges. But it was real. I had missed that sound. After Ryan left her life, Emily did not suddenly become whole again. That is another thing people misunderstand. Leaving the person who harmed you is not the final step. Sometimes it is the first step into the hardest room. She had to untangle accounts, meet with Rachel, file affidavits, explain to creditors that signatures were disputed, change locks, replace her phone, learn which friendships had quietly faded because Ryan had isolated her so well. Some days she was angry enough to shake. Other days she cried because she missed the version of him she thought had existed. "I feel stupid," she told me one evening. We were folding laundry in my living room, something we had not done together since she was in college. "You're not stupid. I'm a nurse mom. I catch symptoms for a living. How did I not see my own life? Because love can become a fog when someone keeps feeding it fear." She sat with that for a moment. Then she folded one of my towels with careful, unnecessary precision and whispered, "I believed him over you." That wound still hurt. I could have pretended it did not. I could have rushed to comfort her and said it was fine. But it was not fine, and real healing cannot grow in places where everyone keeps lying to be polite. "Yes," I said softly. "You did." Her eyes filled. "I'm sorry. I know you are. I don't know how to fix that. You fix it by telling the truth from now on, even when it's hard." She nodded, crying quietly. So we started there. Truth. Not perfect trust. Not instant closeness. Just truth. Some nights, Emily stayed at my house. She slept in her old room beneath a quilt my mother had made. The first time I passed her doorway and saw her asleep there, I had to lean against the hallway wall because grief and gratitude hit me at the same time. No mother wants her grown daughter's marriage to end, but no mother wants her daughter trapped inside a lie either. Ryan's case moved slowly, as legal things often do. There were hearings, delays, statements, negotiations, and words I had never wanted to learn. He eventually faced formal consequences, though not as quickly or neatly as I once imagined justice should work. His business collapsed. More people came forward. Denise's name was cleared with several vendors. Mark stopped speaking to Ryan for a while, though I never asked what happened between them. As for me, I recovered most of what had been taken. Most, not all. That mattered at first. I stared at the missing portion like it was a scar across my bank statement. Then one day, Thomas said something I wrote down and kept inside Daniel's desk. "Kimberly, getting back money is important. Getting back your authority over your own life is greater." He was right. Ryan had taken money, but he had also taken my confidence. For a while, I questioned every choice, every signature, every phone call, every kind gesture from anyone. I hated that. I hated that one person's betrayal could make kindness itself feel suspicious. So I made a decision. I would be careful, but I would not become cold. There is a difference. That summer, I began volunteering once a week at a senior community center on the north side of Columbus. At first, I helped with reading programs and paperwork workshops. Then, one afternoon, the director asked if I would speak to a small group about financial safety for older adults. "I'm not an expert," I said. "No," she replied, "but you're someone people will believe." I almost said no. The thought of telling my story to strangers made my stomach twist. Shame still lived in me, even if it was quieter now. But then I thought about Denise's words. Men like Ryan survive by making every victim feel alone and embarrassed. So I said yes. The first group had 11 people in it, mostly women, a few widows, one retired postal worker, one former school librarian, one woman who kept her purse clutched tightly in her lap the whole time. I did not tell every detail. Some things belonged only to me and Emily. But I told them enough. I told them about paperwork that sounded harmless, about family members who used concern as pressure, about the danger of signing when you are tired, scared, or trying to avoid conflict, about calling an attorney before there is a crisis, about keeping copies, about trusting the uneasy feeling in your stomach. When I finished, the woman with the purse raised her hand. "My grandson wants me to add him to my account," she said. "He says it's easier." The room went quiet. I answered gently. "Easier for whom?" She looked down. Then she nodded. After that, the workshops grew. Thomas agreed to speak once a month for free. Denise came one evening and explained basic bookkeeping red flags. Emily helped create a simple checklist for hospital emergencies and financial documents. Eventually, we named the program Daniel's Shield. I cried the day we printed the first flyer. Daniel would have hated the attention, but he would have loved the purpose. By fall, Emily moved into a small townhouse 10 minutes from me. She painted the kitchen yellow because she said she wanted the room to feel awake. She adopted a shy gray cat named Pepper. She still had hard days, but she also had new routines. Her paycheck went into her own account. Her laughter returned slowly. Her shoulders stopped rising every time her phone buzzed. One Sunday evening, she came over for dinner. I made pot roast, mashed potatoes, and green beans, the meal she had loved as a child. We ate at the kitchen table while rain moved softly against the new roof. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then Emily looked around the kitchen and said, "This house feels like itself again." I smiled. "So do you." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I don't deserve how patient you've been." I wasn't always patient. You still stayed. I looked at my daughter at the lines of exhaustion and strength now living together in her face. "Love stays," I said. "But love also tells the truth." Outside, the rain fell steadily, but no water came through the ceiling. The house held. The roof held. We held. And for the first time in a long time, I did not feel like Ryan's betrayal was the center of my story. It was only the storm. What came after was mine. Life taught me that betrayal does not always come from strangers. Sometimes it walks into your kitchen, calls you family, and learns exactly where your heart is soft before it takes what was never offered. That kind of pain can make a person feel foolish, ashamed, and alone. But trusting someone is not weakness. Loving your family is not stupidity. The fault belongs to the person who abuses that love. I also learned that protecting yourself does not mean you have stopped caring. Boundaries are not cruelty. Asking questions is not disrespect. Saying no is not betrayal. And when money, documents, or property are involved, love should never require silence. If you are old or widowed, dependent on family, or simply someone who has always tried to keep peace, please remember this. Your life still belongs to you. Your savings, your home, your signature, your voice, and your dignity matter. No one has the right to make you feel guilty for protecting them. And if you have ever been the Emily in someone's story caught between the truth and someone you loved, there is still a way back. It begins with honesty. It begins with courage. It begins the moment you stop defending the person who keeps hurting others and start standing beside the truth. If this story touched your heart, I would love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever seen someone use family love as a weapon? What would you have done in Kimberly's place? Please share your story in the comments and tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there. Your words may help someone else feel less alone. If emotional family stories like this speak to you, please like this video and subscribe for more stories about truth healing and the strength to begin again.